Welcome to episode 108 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live at the Live 360 conference on December 5, 2018. This is a show about Office 365, Azure, and the IT Pro and end-user side of life, where we discuss a topic or recent news related to Office 365 or Azure and how it relates to you as an IT Pro. In today's episode, Scott has Matt McDermott back on the show to spend a little more time talking about Office 365 backup and recovery, rationalizing why you need it, as well as what backup and recovery features are native to Office 365 for both end users and IT pros.
Scott Hogue sitting at Live 360 in Orlando. I'm
always
here
sitting. We could stand.
I know. I sit for all these things. I have a standing desk at home. So this is my opportunity to sit and be lazy. Don't ruin it for me. We're down here at Live 360, and I have Matt McDermott with me from Spanning Cloud Apps. And we're going to have a nice, fun conversation about backup and recovery in Office 365 and all of the things that are out there for admins and end users to take a look at and think about.
Yep, absolutely.
Real quick, before we get into it, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself? And I need to make sure that you tell everyone your at least work title, and then any other titles that happen to pop up along the way.
Titles. So my name is Matthew McDermott. I am an Office Apps and Services MVP. I work for Spanning Cloud Apps as a principal technical marketing engineer, which I joke around and tell people that really what I do is I'm the Office 365 guy. I think they put principal in front of my title because I have gray hair.
They did the same to me.
Oh, okay. There you go. So I think, it's supposed to be esteemed, but, we are a cloud backup company. We take care of Office 365 items by backing them up into AWS, actually. We back them up into the AWS data centers around the world.
All right, cool. So let's get into that conversation a little bit. And it has a couple of different ways that we can approach it and think about it. And I love conversations like this where we can think about how to rationalize what we get when we buy Office 365.
Absolutely.
What are my SLAs and my backups, right? From a service description and a service provider side of things. So let's kind of talk through responsibility there at the platform side.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're kind of talking about before we got started as well was talking through user responsibilities as well.
Absolutely.
Which is just as important. So there's going to be knobs and levers that are going to be tweaked by admins to dial in a tendency to perform in certain ways, retain data for certain amounts of time.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, there are going to be things that end users are going to do for themselves as well.
Can do for themselves, can do to themselves, can have it done to them. All of the above.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I put the onus on the site collection administrator primarily, setting the permissions correctly so that your end users can't do the wrong thing. I mean, you can do simple things. So let me start at the very top. If we're talking about SharePoint specifically, all the SharePoint content, lists, list items, libraries, documents in those libraries, subsites, and the entire site collection, when any of those objects are deleted in SharePoint, they go into the recycle bin. The only thing that's a little weird is if you delete a site collection, it does require an administrator to undelete that because there's an administrative tenant-wide, if you will, recycle bin. But the other three, list items, lists, documents, and the document libraries, and the subsites, those all go into the site collection recycle bin. And for 30 days, they sit in what's called the first stage recycle bin. And then after that 30 days, they roll off of the 30-day UI and they roll into the site collection recycle bin, where a site collection administrator or an owner can undelete them at that point. But if the site collection administrator doesn't know what they're doing, or if somebody wants to do something malicious, they can delete the object, delete it out of the first stage recycle bin, delete it out of the second stage recycle bin, and at that point the item is gone.
Yeah, it's a hard delete.
Absolutely.
And we've passed through all levels of softness along the way.
Right. But what's really nice about that recycle bin is that it's super easy for the end users. Once you've taught them how it all works, it's super easy for them to get the content back by themselves. If they deleted the item by mistake, slip of the mouse when they were hovering over the item, or with the modern design now and the modern lists, the delete key works. So multi-select, hit the delete key, and those items go right into the recycle bin and can be easily restored.
Cool. And Microsoft has been putting some options in place when it comes to even site controls. So you talked about, hey, let's delete a subsite, and where does it go and what does it happen? Well, now there are, again, those knobs and levers. We can go ahead and put constraints in place on users and say, thou shall not have subsites. So we can kind of flatten hierarchies and maybe simplify user training and where you're going to point people and drive them in. And that's just the SharePoint side of things.
That's right.
And there's a bunch of different workloads. So we've got groupified sites as well, which are a little bit different because they exist in the context of a group.
That's true.
Which also support soft delete.
That's true.
But their recycle bin sitting over an Exchange.
In Exchange.
Conveniently.
That's right.
Because that's where all your SharePoint sites should live is
over an Exchange.
Inside of Exchange.
Right. As I was saying, when we put the onus on the end users, I think the other thing that site collection administrators and even end users can do to help limit the chances of losing data is to be smarter about permissions. Because right out of the box, when you have a SharePoint site, you've got the typical visitors, owners, and members. Now,
Formerly contributors.
Yeah, members says it's contributors. And there is a permission level as well that is full control, edit, contribute, and read only. But both edit and contribute include delete.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I like to do is I like to take that contributors group, make a copy of it, or the contributors permission, make a copy of it, and then remove delete from it. So people can still contribute all they want, but in order to do an actual delete, they have to ask somebody who has that power, so to speak, to delete those items. It just prevents...
And that's, just to be clear, that's very contextual, right? There are places where contributors should absolutely be allowed to delete.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, because...
This is not all a set-in-stone thing.
No, and I wouldn't want to have it be a policy. But in those areas where maybe you don't have a great training program that people know about what happens when things get deleted. I've been doing restores and ask, why did this get deleted in the first place? Now that we have to go back to, say, a database when we're on-prem and we actually have to go back to a backup copy of the site, they just didn't know that they had the rights to do that, so they tried deleting it. And then they tried doing a recycle bin clear, and that worked too. And of course, now we're back to having to use database backups.
Which we don't have in Office 365.
We don't have that in Office 365. What you do have is you have a 14-day window within which Microsoft can do a full restore of a site collection if you file a trouble ticket in time.
I found that to be hit or miss, depending on tenant too. So technically, if you read the service description, that 14-day restore is catastrophic restore.
Exactly.
And my experience with that has been, particularly when it comes to things like OneDrives, is catastrophic restore is Microsoft screwed something up and we lost a data center, not a user lost. It doesn't even matter if it's your CEO or anything like that. And it is a path that you walk down where you are 100% at the whim of the person who takes your ticket or the escalation manager at the daytime phase of the moon.
And if you think about it too, if they're going to restore from their backup, then how much data am I going to lose as a result of the restore? Because I've got a working site where people have been adding new content since that deletion occurred. And so, just how much data am I going to lose as a result of getting my data back?
And even what point in time was that backup taken at? Sure. They're not doing millisecond backups.
Not at all.
And even RTOs on those can be a little bit extended because you are going through support tickets and email support and all the fun pieces that come with that. But there are some things that Microsoft has added over time where everybody can maybe slow down or have the opportunity to go in and do that data recovery outside of even site recycle bins. So we've got...
Oh my gosh, we have OneDrive Files Restore. And OneDrive Files Restore is a really cool feature because what it allows you to do, let's say that you accidentally delete your local files out of OneDrive. So you're synchronizing to your desktop, and for one reason or another, even moving a folder, you move the folder out of OneDrive and drag it on and drop it on your desktop. Now, OneDrive sees that as a mass delete. So they have mass delete notification. They'll send you an email that says, hey, did you really mean to do this? the client will actually stop synchronization. It'll pause itself, and it'll pop up toast to say, hey, are you sure you wanted to do that? If, in fact, you did, then it will go and remove all those files from OneDrive. But as a malware protection, they've also added this files restore. And what that allows you to do is for a period of 30 days, going back 30 days, you can just rewind where your OneDrive was till yesterday or a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and it will restore your OneDrive to that day's image, if you will. All the files that were there on that day, it'll restore those files. It gives you the choice of what you want to restore.
I was going to say, it's not an all or nothing proposition in that one. So we can do point in time restore.
Absolutely.
Basically down to the minute or millisecond, depending on what's going on and how it's taking those backups.
But yeah, you can. And there are little caveats to it. Like, let's say that last Thursday you deleted an item in a folder, and today you create a folder
with the same name.
Yep. It won't pave that folder. It will give you an error that folder already exists. So there is some logic built into how they do the restore so that they don't leave you in a worse state than you were in when you didn't have the document that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's always important to call out for all of these different restoration capabilities, no matter what. There's opportunities for collisions up, down, left, right.
Absolutely.
We see that a lot with group restores from soft deletes because someone has gone and now they've provisioned another site that lived at the same URL.
Right.
Or even the same group name or whatever it happens to be. And that logic didn't used to be great. It used to spit a bunch of red text at you back in PowerShell and yell at you and say, oh no, you've done something wrong.
Yes.
When
you didn't. I just wanted to restore the site.
I just wanted to understand what was going on. And they've gotten a lot better about that, about being able to dial and drive that in. And we've seen OneDrive file restore, that capability to do point-in-time restore back to 30 days, extended to SharePoint
Exactly.
as well.
That's right. And so they're bringing this. So because OneDrive is SharePoint, because the underlying file system of so much of Office 365 ultimately is SharePoint, then you'll start seeing these capabilities come back. There's obviously a lot more work involved in the user interface part of it for SharePoint because in OneDrive, it's a whole new interface on top of what was our My Sites. With SharePoint Online, there's new interfaces that have to be added. So it's going to take them a little time to get there, but it's going to be great when they've got it.
Yep. And the goal there, or kind of the design and the constraints around that are to work the same way that it works over in OneDrive for business.
Right.
And consumer OneDrive as well. It's kind of on both sides. It's a little bit weird. We say OneDrive and it's like OneDrive, all the things.
Yeah, it's the whole brand that we're talking about.
That drive in
and I mean, I got to say, Microsoft's been doing a great job with the malware protection that they're putting in place. Not just the phishing side of it, but phishing emails and things like that. But now with being able to survive a ransomware attack, the crypto viruses and stuff like that. This is really cool. I mean, it's really great.
Mover is a cloud migration company that specializes in moving your company's files from file servers or cloud storage like Box, Dropbox, and Google into Office 365. Their patented technology makes Mover the fastest OneDrive file migrator in the world. Moving dozens of terabytes of data a day is a breeze. Use Mover's free, industry-leading migration guides, or ask for a managed migration and they'll take the lead. With Mover, all your data is secure and intact. Running completely behind the scenes, you don't lose time, money, or hair while you transfer. Scan, plan, migrate, report. Migrations that don't suck with Mover. Visit mover.io for more info.
I remember when they rolled it out, I was working for a company where we were getting hit left and right with all of that. And it was before they rolled out the capability in the UI to do it.
Yes.
But they were doing the backups in the background. But you would go in as an admin and actually execute a restore on behalf of the user, a little bit of PowerShell, and kind of iterate through everything and drive it to where it needs to be. And it's vastly different today. They've even started to add hooks in for things like Windows Defender on the desktop.
Yep, absolutely.
Where they are OneDrive aware and they know what's going on. So in that same context of we delete a bunch of files, that's a user action. Well, maybe there is a piece of malware or ransomware and it's coming through and encrypting a bunch of stuff. Defender can not only potentially mitigate that attack, if it can't, it can surface it for you and tell you it happened, and it gives you that one-click restore capability on the desktop side as well. So communicate with the web service and, click a button.
Absolutely.
And it all just kind of works. It used to be click a button and hope for the best.
And it's also sort of focusing more on the user, right? It's giving the user notifications. Having it be in OneDrive means that it's user focused, because that's what the OneDrive is for. It's for your user. So
it's that whole me versus we thing.
Me versus we. So rather than having IT be responsible for end user restores, I think it's really important that we put these tools in the hands of the users so that they're not only responsible for their own mistakes, but they can recover from their own mistakes.
Yeah, and especially for something like OneDrive, it's low-hanging fruit. You're not eating into massive consumption against your tenant storage quotas, anything like that.
Right.
But you got to go out and train the users.
Yes.
So you communicate it, or maybe you dangle some fruit at them. Hey, we're going to do known folder move for a subset of you.
Yep.
And so now all your documents and download folders and everything are going to live over here. But they're actually going to be in the same place. But you just picked up this awesome new capability.
Right. And they have these new little icons. What do the icons mean? How do I clear?
It's got a little
storage.
cloud. I've got this free up space thing.
Yeah.
How do I share a document? Do I right click and do I do share, or do I do the other share?
Yeah.
You see that one all the time. So I shared the file, and it's shared at file C:.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the wrong share.
You created an SMB share. You did not mean to do that. Oh, that's why it didn't look like anything you showed me. Did you click the button we showed you? No, I clicked it. I got it. Yeah.
I see your training past is paying off. I can tell.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. No, so the big thing that I try to educate people on with when it pertains to the recycle bin is that it's 90 days. Well, it's 93 days. They give us a couple extra days beyond the quote-unquote 3 months. But it's 93 days in the recycle bin, and then it's gone. So no matter what is happening with the document during that time, whether it's first stage recycle bin or second, it rolls out in 93 days. It also will roll out earlier if you're using site quotas and you're approaching your quota limit. SharePoint will start to purge the recycle bin to make room for your quota.
Yep.
So your mileage may vary, and where in heavily governed organizations where they are using site quotas, then this is going to sting there too, because you're going to get hit with a recycle bin clear before you anticipated if you're close to your limits.
Yeah, the only one you can rely on is kind of first stage at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
You're back into user land and user control, and hoping you've taught your content curators to water the plants and keep the garden alive.
Now, if you're using legal holds or any of retention policies, then that's going to retain the information. So you can use legal holds to prevent deletes. It's not really what it's designed for. It's more designed for retention of legal documents within your organization as part of a larger initiative to manage your content.
It also differs by workload. So it's very hard to train users in that context. So, we're at admin level controls.
Right.
And what happens in the case of soft deletes and hard deletes, because there are contexts or objects. So I'll do Office 365 groups that when they're hard deleted and there's a hold against it, there are parts of the mailbox that are retained because that's where the chats were.
That's right. Yeah, if we're talking about mail, certainly.
But they're not retained within the group anymore.
Right.
There's kind of a special container on the back end where all that data is shifted over to, just so it can be queried inside the eDiscovery Center.
Exactly.
And you completely lost context, you've lost restoration ability, and you, as a consumer of the platform, whether you're an admin, a user, you're in the help desk, whatever kind of role you fill, you have to know all that stuff in your head.
Absolutely.
And it changes occasionally. I don't want to say all the time, but it does change.
And the limit numbers are different when we're talking about Exchange. When an end user so there's a couple ways end users are going to lose their mail. One is they're going to do a hard delete instead of a soft delete. So if you bypass your own recycle bin in Exchange, whether you're using Outlook on the web, whatever it is, those items are going to go into the recycle bin where they're going to stay for 14 days by default on a brand new tenant. You can up that to 30 days with PowerShell, but then they're going to slip into, once deleted, they're gone after those 30 days. Now, if you put a legal hold on it, like you said, there are these hidden mailboxes where they can go. And there's also a a deleted items, retained deleted items folder.
Yeah, there's a hidden folder that manifests in the background.
Yep.
That one has some interesting impacts too, because there's storage limits to your mailbox.
That's right.
So the more data that you begin to retain, because everybody is kind of lazy and they just do unlimited legal holds, you run into this upper bound within a mailbox of, hey, I can't get new items. It says my mailbox is full, but I only have 10 gigs of data in here.
Yeah.
No, you have 90 gigs of data that's been retained for the past 5 years because somebody implemented a legal hold on your mailbox and never shut it off.
Right. So I might have said it a little bit incorrectly, but when the user deletes items, they go in their deleted items folder. There's a setting in Outlook that says clear my deleted items every time I exit Outlook, which I've never turned on, but has also been responsible for. I thought I was just doing housekeeping, and it turns out those items are really gone.
Yep.
Because what that does is that's another version of hard delete, is removing or clearing your own deleted items folder, puts it into the deleted items that are the folder where deleted items are retained for that 14 to 30 days. And so really, when we're talking about protecting our users, you can use, again, e-discovery on these things so that you can make sure that they're not getting deleted if it's corporate intelligence, if it pertains to certain legal matters.
If it is subject to retention or hold.
That's right.
We should go in and be deliberate and configure retention or hold.
Absolutely.
Like that's fine, 100% valid.
Right.
I think the problem I see a lot is
every single message in the company.
Yes, people go in and they just turn things on, or you'll walk in for a litigation hold and you'll say, okay, what's the actual period that we're looking for? Just keep everything.
Yeah.
Really?
The hoarding mentality.
Do you understand what that's going to do? Because you have a main mailbox, you have an archive mailbox, you already have a 200 and some odd gig mailbox.
Right.
Let's just do that for a couple thousand users and see what happens.
Right. I was talking to a guy a couple weeks ago at the European SharePoint conference, and he told me that they had suffered a data loss when his predecessor had configured a deletion policy, and they hadn't turned it on. He noticed that it was not on, turned it on, and nuked mailboxes because either setting a deletion policy or retracting a hold policy. So they had a legal hold on, everything was being held. Retract the hold policy, all of a sudden all the dates start picking up and all the deletions start occurring there too. So really understanding how those things work before you implement them and having the legal team behind you to say, yes, what you're doing is approved and appropriate. Because really, it's just technology that's being used to implement somebody else's compliance plan.
So I'm a big fan of that side of it, right?
Yeah.
Like IT is not the one who sets the policy.
Right.
IT helps you implement the policy. And we only implement the policy in the context of the technology and what it's able to do.
Yeah.
So when you come and say, it must do this, product doesn't do that. Sorry.
Right.
Here's what we can do and here's how we can align to that. Maybe that means we rewrite policy, but you go back and handle that like corporate governance.
Precisely.
Right? That's a very different thing.
Precisely.
Because you don't want to be the one who is responsible for clicking the delete button
and just having someone ask, where did that go?
Making weird things happen.
Well, and even beyond just, we're talking about Exchange and SharePoint, but there's another delete that happens that companies go, really? And that's when a user leaves your company. So the user leaves your company, you remove their license in Office 365, and you delete the user. And 30 days later, you have up to 30 days to recover that user intact. After that 30 days, Mailbox goes away, OneDrive goes away, and the user is hard deleted out of the system. So the manager that discovers 33 days after the person left the company that they should have retained their OneDrive because all the project documents were being shared out of there. Those kinds of things really, really catch people off guard.
Yeah.
Obscurity is your cloud enablement partner to help guide your organization through all phases of cloud migration and adoption. As the leading global brand for enabling the Microsoft Cloud, their Microsoft MVP and multi-certified cloud solutions architect team has authored over 20 mock courses, the Microsoft Pressbook implementing Azure Solutions 7533, and several Microsoft Cloud practice playbooks for Microsoft partners. Obscurity is the official learning partner for Microsoft, GitHub, Chef, Puppet, Databricks, Ansible, Red Hat, and many more technologies across the cloud ecosystem. Learn more about their advisory services and how they can help you reach and exceed your 2019 transformation goals at www.upsgility.com/home/advisory services.
I think the takeaway for all this is like you have to go as an administrator or consumer of technology, right? Like it's like you went to the grocery store and tried to pick, which kind of spaghetti sauce you're going to buy today. You're going to buy the one in the middle of the shelf that's kind of expensive. You want the one on the top, the one on the bottom. But you have to go through and read all the ingredients and understand for each of these, okay, here's how it is going to work. Because for better or worse, the way it's documented is how it's going to work.
Right.
So you go ahead and you recognize that and figure it out. And then I think the nice thing is where folks like Spanning come in and Dattos of the world and everybody else is there's a wall.
Yep.
You don't always have to run into that wall at 100 miles an hour and just go splat against it, right? Like quite often there's like a door or the road takes a turn and we can go around the other side and say, okay, here's how we do more enablement and here are the features that are missing for us and where we might need to
or just the unmet requirements too. So our requirement is that after an employee leaves, we retain their OneDrive content for a year.
It was all the stuff that you used to have to not worry about on-prem because you would just say, okay, we turned it on and we left it on and it's okay. But all of a sudden now that somebody else is running it for you, where does your responsibility as a service lie? Because you're part of the service.
Sure.
You're responsible for some of those configurations. Let's talk a little bit about ways to skirt around the wall.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to kind of go back to that user context.
Oh, absolutely.
And think about ways to empower users, make it a little bit easier for help desk or kind of admin side of things to focus on service delivery.
Sure.
Because that's your job. You purchase a service, deliver the service. Right. And maybe there's an extension in the service to say users can do item level restores in a mailbox by clicking this button here and
teaching them how these things work, teaching them that the limits aren't the same everywhere and there are alternatives to deletion. You can use the archive, like you said, in Exchange. There's other ways for them to safely save and secure their content at the same time. One of the things that I like to show in Exchange Online is that with PowerShell, administrators, which does require an administrator, can restore items using the PowerShell commandlets. They can actually do effectively a search for the items that were deleted and help bring them back. But from an end user perspective, they're saddled with the same 93 days in SharePoint, 30 days max in Exchange Online without having a solution like Spanning in place, and particularly after the employee leaves. So an employee leaves, you shouldn't delete their user object. You should disable it so that they can't log in, make it inactive, and then decide what the policy is for the company. Does somebody get tasked? Usually the manager is who gets tasked with this because that's how SharePoint does it. SharePoint looks at the manager and then sends an email to that person that never knows what to do with it. In the OneDrive settings, there's a secondary manager object or account that you can specify that will get the message that the OneDrive is up for deletion. And then there should be some process that your company goes through to vet that information on that OneDrive prior to deleting it, prior to letting it delete. And the same with their mailbox. The mailboxes, you have a better option. You can set them to shared. So you can set that mailbox, take it off of the user, make it a shared mailbox, and then more than one person in that department could be responsible for reviewing items that are outstanding, emails that are left unanswered, things like that. They can make sure that there's no corporate intelligence inside there.
It's a bit of a rationalization exercise to figure out things like that mailbox scenario.
Yeah.
So technically, based on the letter of the license agreement that we all signed when we signed up for our tenancies, because we all read the legalese, shared mailboxes are truly for shared user workloads. So retaining a user mailbox through the core concept of a shared mailbox, people like to do that because shared mailboxes are zero cost. And they go, oh, cool, it's free. I can keep that forever. So that's technically outside the bounds.
It is outside the bounds.
So you have to license that mailbox. So there's a cost component to it if you do want to retain it for a certain period of time to give everybody the opportunity to go through it and figure it out. And you, as an admin or consumer of the service, need to figure out where you want to spend your money now.
Yeah.
Do I want to retain a mailbox here? Do I want to potentially back up that mailbox?
Right.
Like maybe I
export it to a PST or something.
I like pain, right? I want to go for a PST and pull it down and have it. Or I'd like to have it someplace else online and still have the ability to get at the data.
Right.
Just for retention,
Absolutely.
My retention policy says thou shalt stay for the next 3 years.
Right.
I don't want to pay for an E3 or even just an Exchange Online P1 license for the next
3 years.
3 years
for an employee that left.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I also don't want that employee showing up in the GAL. I don't want the names in SharePoint people search. I don't want this employee to have a delve page. So you have to think through all of the things that happen and how you want these people to be.
That's why I said it's a rationalization.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's a technology question. It's a cost question.
Right.
And it is truly an operational construct for you. Like, how do you put that together and how do you manage it?
Yeah.
How are you going to deliver a service?
Right. And how are you protecting your company? What are the things that are keeping you awake at night, or what are the things that take a long time, that are those eye roll moments when you're like, oh, that just happened? Address those. Come up with a plan for how you're going to solve those problems. Whether it's empowering end users to be able to restore their own content, or whether it's administrative restores that you're planning, get good at those. Get good at the PowerShell. Create the scripts now while there's no pressure on you, so that you can do this better in the future.
Yeah, you can create test tenants and play
Absolutely.
with it. It's okay.
Highly recommend it.
There's trial tenants. There's all sorts of ways out there to understand the impacts of enabling legal holds, enabling retentions, and maybe I want to build documentation in the context of my business. So we do a custom logo and a customized sweep bar. And I just want it to look like my stuff. Yep. Nobody's saying don't do those things. Do all of them. Take the time to do them. It's worth taking the time.
Yeah. We also like to say it's not if, it's when do these horrible things happen, because it is a fact that there are bad people out there that are trying to get at everybody's stuff, your stuff, my stuff. They're throwing a big net out to figure out who's going to bite. One of the studies was that 77% of IT executives in the past year had suffered some sort of data loss in their SaaS applications, whether it's Salesforce, G Suite, Office 365. So it happens. For malicious actors, it's 197 days is the average for companies to realize that they've been hacked, or that they've suffered a data loss, or that something malicious has occurred to them. 197 days is way outside the bounds. It's forever. Way outside the bounds of most backup solutions. And really, I don't see it as Microsoft's job to protect me that far out for no additional charge on my tenant.
Right.
So either I've got to pony up with storage, my own, say Azure storage, for that data, or I have to use a third party that is willing to store that data for me, or move it to some location that is not necessarily on Microsoft's cloud, so that data is secure and, in a different location than it is being used. Yeah, just like we used to take tapes.
It's a whole management plane.
We used to take tapes out of the building, and it wasn't okay to back up in the building you're in and store those in the building
Careful,
you're in.
You're dating ourselves.
I know. I've heard that.
We talk about virtual tape now.
Yeah, definitely. But, and so that's where that leads us into spanning. And that's what we do, is we do cloud to cloud backup for Office 365, G Suite, and Salesforce. And for Office 365, I'm thrilled to be part of this company because I love the product. It looks awesome, so it's fun to demo. It has those user-driven restore capabilities, so that an end user with their license, there's no additional login because we're using your Office 365 OAuth to get the users in. They can go restore their stuff, and they can go back. They can choose any point in time that they want to restore back to, and it just works.
So there's some administrative controls where somebody's gone in and they've said, here's how we do backup for a mailbox, and here's how long we do retention and recovery points. And
so what happens is when you install the app, and there's a 14-day trial that you can pull out of the App Store, and you install the app, by authenticating it with, or by consenting as a global administrator.
Trust it.
Yeah, you trust it. But you go through the consent process, and then we ask you what data center you want to be in. So we've got data centers in Australia, in Europe, and in North America. And I usually just recommend back up to the closest one to you. So if your tenant is in Europe, then choose the Europe data center. If your tenant is in Australia, then choose the Australian data center. Once you've done that, we look at all your users, and you can license each one of them individually, or you can use the PowerShell module to license them in bulk.
When it comes to email, Outlook and Office 365 are fantastic, but sometimes there are things you'd like to do that aren't implemented. Sperry Software creates Outlook add-ins and Office 365 services that fill in these gaps. For instance, there are Outlook add-ins to automatically print emails and or attachments, save emails to PDF, send out recurring emails, or how about a warning when you're going to do a reply to all instead of a normal reply? Find these and many more email productivity solutions. Get started today by visiting www.sperrysoftware.com/cloudit.
I'd imagine, because you said our data centers, so stuff going out and being in other places, it's another conversation for everybody to have, right?
Absolutely.
Understand where the data lives, how it's protected,
right.
and security
right.
controls.
And ours is
data
encrypted
plane.
in place,
Yep.
and encrypted, and while it's being transmitted, it's encrypted, and while it's at rest, it's encrypted. And you can even bring your own key if you want to make sure that we actually never have access to your stuff.
Very important for a cloud service.
Absolutely.
Because you're not allowed to shred hard drives in the cloud.
That's right.
You can only shred your data.
So we do have administrative controls. They can see when the backups have run. They can see what's backed up and what's failed, with really high level of transparency around what's successful and what's not, because it's your data, and we're saying we are going to protect it. So the reports that run, the notifications that you subscribe to, those kinds of things, we keep you informed as an administrator.
So that's kind of the SharePoint or OneDrive side of things, and
SharePoint
there's
and Exchange side.
Exchange,
yeah,
right?
So an end user, when they go in to see their portal, they see the email that's been backed up, the calendar items that have been backed up, and their OneDrive that's been backed up. From an administrator's perspective, they also see the SharePoint sites that have been backed up.
And just from a kind of client access side of things, because you mentioned OAuth and consent, so you're an application, and
yes, we are.
So you're a nice registered application, so
yes.
Everyone can see that inside of My Apps or from their app launcher if they click on buttons in the waffle.
Exactly. And as a Azure AD administrator, you see the app in the corporate applications catalog as well.
Awesome.
Yep. It's a great application. It's I've been with the company for, I guess this is my 6th week officially. I've been on the road for 3 of those weeks. The day I joined the company, we were there in that building for 2 more days, and then we moved offices. So it's been very much.
It's always good to move house on the second day.
Yeah, I've been kind of a road warrior, and it's been great though. Yeah.
Very cool. Anything else that folks should know about that? So I know you mentioned a trial. I will make sure that I have links in the show notes to all of that stuff and everything else we talked about, right? Docs.microsoft.com and all the support articles.
And the whole thing that we were talking about early, we've done as a webinar, and I did it when I was the first time we did it was in Copenhagen, when I was in Copenhagen, and then we're going to be rebroadcasting that webinar probably before this airs.
Perfect.
But I'll make sure that we have the recording link in the notes. Give me a link,
or if it's on YouTube or your website, whatever it is, we will make sure that all that goes out.
Links to my Twitter account and all that will be in the show notes and stuff like that.
Yes.
I'm Matthew McD on Twitter.
Follow Matt on the Twitters.
Yeah, absolutely, and have fun. Mostly tweet when I'm on the road like we are now. It's like these spikes. You can tell when I've been traveling because of the spikes of my tweets and stuff like that. But no, that'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I appreciate the time.
I appreciate the interview. Thanks.
If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.